It all started on a warm summer evening in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The annual block party was in full swing, with the smell of grilled burgers and the sound of laughter filling the air. Linda, 60, American woman, curvy figure, form-fitting red dress, had just arrived. Her presence immediately turning heads. She moved with a confidence that only years of experience could bring. Her red dress hugging her curves perfectly. Her smile was warm, her eyes sparkling with a mix of mischief and charm. Jake, 20, American guy, athletic build, fitted white shirt and jeans, was standing by the grill, flipping burgers and chatting with his friends. He noticed Linda the moment she walked in. There was something about her that caught his attention. Maybe it was the way she carried herself or the way she seemed completely at ease in her own skin. He couldn't help but stare, his young heart racing a little faster. Linda noticed Jake too. He was tall, with a boyish grin and an air of innocence that was almost endearing. She walked over to the grill, her heels clicking softly on the pavement. "Smells amazing," she said, her voice smooth and inviting. Jake looked up, a little flustered. Thanks. I'm Jake," he stammered, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Linda," she replied, extending her hand. Her touch was firm, her eyes locking with his for just a moment longer than necessary. They started talking, and the conversation flowed effortlessly. Linda shared stories about her travels and her life, while Jake talked about his dreams and his plans for the future. There was an undeniable chemistry between them, a magnetic pull that neither could ignore. As the night went on, they found themselves sitting together on a bench, away from the crowd. The stars were out, and the air was filled with the soft hum of crickets. Linda leaned in a little closer, her perfume intoxicating. "You're quite the charmer, Jake," she said with a playful smile. Jake blushed, scratching the back of his neck. "I could say the same about you, Linda." They laughed, the sound blending with the night. It was the beginning of something neither of them expected, a spark that would soon ignite into something much more. The days turned into weeks, and what started as a casual flirtation quickly escalated into something deeper. Linda and Jake found themselves drawn to each other in ways they hadn't anticipated. Their connection was electric, a mix of passion and curiosity that neither could resist. It began with small gestures. Linda would bake cookies and bring them over to Jake's house, while Jake would offer to help her with yard work. But soon, their meetings became more frequent, more intimate. They'd spend hours talking on her porch, the air between them thick with tension. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jake leaned in and kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, but soon grew into something more intense, more urgent. Their relationship blossomed in secret, a whirlwind of stolen moments and heated encounters. Linda's house became their sanctuary, a place where they could escape the world and lose themselves in each other. The age difference didn't matter to them. What they had was real, raw, and undeniable. Jake was fascinated by Linda's confidence and experience, while Linda was captivated by Jake's youthful energy and innocence. They balanced each other perfectly, their differences only adding to the intensity of their connection. Late at night, they'd lie in bed, talking about everything and nothing, their bodies entwined. But it wasn't just physical, there was an emotional depth to their relationship that surprised them both. Linda found herself opening up to Jake in ways she hadn't with anyone else, while Jake felt a sense of belonging and understanding he'd never experienced before. They were each other's safe haven, a refuge from the chaos of the outside world. Of course, there were challenges. The whispers and judgment from the neighborhood were hard to ignore. But Linda and Jake didn't care. They were too wrapped up in each other to let anyone else's opinions dictate their happiness. It was bound to happen sooner or later. In a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business, secrets didn't stay hidden for long. Linda and Jake had been careful, but their secret romance couldn't stay under wraps forever. The moment of truth came on a crisp autumn afternoon. Linda and Jake were walking hand in hand through the park, lost in their own little world. They didn't notice Mrs. Thompson, the neighborhood's self-proclaimed gossip queen, sitting on a bench nearby. Her eyes widened as she watched them, her mind already racing with the juicy details she'd soon share with anyone who would listen. By the next morning, The news had spread like wildfire. Whispers followed Linda wherever she went, at the grocery store, the post office, even at her book club. Did you hear about Linda and that young man? Isn't he young enough to be her grandson? The judgment was harsh, the stares even harsher. Jake wasn't spared either. His friends teased him relentlessly, calling him a cougar hunter, and making snide comments about his older woman. At first, he tried to laugh it off, but the constant scrutiny started to wear on him. He began to question whether their relationship was worth the trouble. Linda, on the other hand, was unfazed. She'd lived long enough to know that people would talk no matter what. Let them gossip, she told Jake one evening as they sat on her porch. What we have is real, and that's all that matters. Her words were comforting, but Jake couldn't shake the feeling of being under a microscope. The breaking point came when Jake's parents found out. They were horrified, demanding that he end the relationship immediately. She's old enough to be your mother, his father shouted, his face red with anger. Jake felt torn between his feelings for Linda and his loyalty to his family. Linda could see the toll it was taking on him. If this is too much for you, I understand, she said softly, her eyes filled with both love and sadness. Jake hesitated, his heart heavy with the weight of their situation. The weight of the world seemed to press down on Jake's shoulders. Everywhere he turned, there were whispers, judgmental stares, and questions he didn't have answers to. His relationship with Linda, once a source of joy and excitement, had become a battleground of doubt and guilt. Jake found himself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. He loved Linda, there was no denying that. She made him feel alive in a way no one else ever had. But was love enough to overcome the challenges they faced? His parents' disapproval, his friends' teasing, and the constant gossip were chipping away at his resolve. One evening, after another tense phone call with his mother, Jake drove to Linda's house. He needed to see her, to feel her presence, to remind himself why they were fighting for this. When she opened the door, her smile was warm, but her eyes held a hint of worry. She could see the storm brewing inside him. They sat on the porch, the cool night air wrapping around them. Talk to me, Linda said gently, her hand resting on his. Jake hesitated, then let it all pour out, his fears, his doubts, his guilt. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this, he admitted, his voice trembling. Linda listened quietly, her heart aching for him. She knew how hard this was for him, how much he was sacrificing. Jake, she said softly, no one said this would be easy. But if we're willing to fight for it, it's worth it, you're worth it. Her words were a balm to his soul. But the internal struggle didn't go away. Jake found himself questioning everything, his feelings, his future, even his identity. Was he just a young guy caught up in a fantasy? Or was this something real? Something worth holding on to? Meanwhile, Linda was grappling with her own doubts. She hated seeing Jake so torn. And she couldn't shake the guilt of being the cause of his pain. Maybe I'm being selfish, she thought one night as she lay in bed alone. Maybe I'm holding him back from the life he's supposed to have. Their love was real, but the world around them seemed determined to tear it apart. Both of them were caught in a whirlwind of emotions, trying to hold on to each other while navigating the storm inside their own hearts. The tension between Jake and Linda had reached its peak. The whispers, the judgment, the constant pressure, it all came crashing down one fateful evening. Jake stood at a crossroads, torn between his heart and the expectations of the world around him. It started with a phone call from his best friend. Mark, dude, you've got to end this. Mark said bluntly, she's great and all, but this isn't going to work. You're throwing your life away for something that's doomed from the start. Jake hung up the phone, his frustration boiling over. He couldn't take it anymore. He drove to Linda's house, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. When she opened the door, she could see the storm in his eyes. We need to talk, he said, his voice heavy with conflict. They sat in the living room, the silence between them deafening. Jake took a deep breath, his hands trembling. Linda, I love you, I really do, but this is tearing me apart. I don't know if I can keep doing this. Linda's heart sank, but she forced herself to stay calm. I understand, she said softly, I've been feeling it too. The pressure. The judgment, it's a lot. But Jake, love isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be worth it. Jake looked at her, his eyes filled with pain. But what if it's not enough? What if we're just setting ourselves up for more heartbreak? Linda reached out and took his hand. Jake, I can't make this decision for you. You have to choose what's right for you. But know this, whatever you decide, I'll respect it. I just want you to be happy. The room fell silent as Jake wrestled with his thoughts. He looked at Linda, her face a mix of love and sadness, and felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about them, it was about his future, his identity, his place in the world. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I need some time to think. I need to figure out what I really want. Linda nodded, her heart breaking but her resolve strong. Take all the time you need. Jake, I'll be here.